In Module 4, we want to put into practice two of the key skills that you've seen in the previous two modules. In Module 2, a description of the model that informs the influence style inventory that you completed and we just reviewed in Module 3. The two specific behaviors that we want you to practice that are directly related to being effective in influencing are asserting behavior, and in particular asserting without power. And the second behavior is inquiring and inquiring under pressure. This particular presentation covers what we want you to do specifically as you practice asserting in this case. We're going to start with the list of 3 complaints that you wrote down in your online journal at the end of Module 2. And we're going to ask that you pick one of those complaints, and it's a complaint that would be directly related to a colleague or a work situation. So you're going to pick one of those complaints, and what we're going to ask you to do is to apply assertive behavior in a conversation with that person. And let's see what the result is. But we want you to specifically be assertive as regards this complaint. And what that means in this case is that being assertive is certainly an important and essential skill if you're going to be influential with others. However, it's not the whole story when it comes to influence. A conversation for influence involves many different elements. And so we want you to just take that into account and see this as an opportunity to practice something. The analogy I would use at this point is, think of it as something related to tennis. In tennis, there's many elements that you engage in to be effective as a tennis player. But when you practice a specific stroke. So you might practice and work just on your backhand. And we know that the whole game of tennis is more than just the backhand. It would be crazy to serve from your backhand or only stroke from the baseline using a backhand stroke. You'd use a variety of different approaches as you play tennis. And we know that influence is the same way. But for the sake of practice, we only want you to focus on being assertive in this particular situation. And this module will cover a little bit about how do you go about doing that. So we're going to practice using the assertive style. And being assertive even when you do not have formal authority. And that's an important one. Many folks feel like they're compromised when they don't have the formal power in terms of being assertive. And so it can turn into a weak assertive behavior or mitigated communications around that particular behavior. Let's look at that and give you a chance to practice just the pure exercise of your will. And we're asking that you do this with a real issue, and in this case it's a complaint about someone you have on your team. In order to do that, it's important to come back to this concept of power and authority and look at the different sources of power when we're trying to influence. The one that we're most sort of obviously aware of at all times is the authority or positional power someone has. And that's power based on what has been granted by the organization or the institution. It's a power that's based in formal authority, decision rights, control of resources, the ability to dispense punishments or rewards. And we're all pretty clear about what that is and tuned into that. There's another kind of power, which is the notion of status power. And status power comes not from the organization. Status power is a relational power, or a power that is granted by the social group, the community, if you will. And the status power can't be given by the organization, and it can't be taken away by the organization. It's given by the people with whom you form a particular kind of affiliation. And that power can be based on, how well you connect with people, your own charisma, the respect for the skill set that you bring, your own status and credibility. All of those are pieces of what forms status power. Each of these particular approaches to exercising power can be done effectively and ineffectively. When we're effective at exercising power from either the positional or status given power, it has an impact. When we're effective from positional power, you gain respect for yourself, respect for the position, and if you consider your own experience, I imagine you see lots of folks who are managers that you can see real respect for. When people use status power in an effective way, it enhances the level of confidence and trust in a particular social grouping or social affiliation. When that power is used ineffectively, an attempt to influence that's ineffective, it generates fear. And we've all seen that with positional power, where people do it because they're afraid of their boss. But in a status power situation, it leads to competition, to irrelevance. You will see this when someone assumes power in a social situation, assumes a certain kind of status, and the rest of the group doesn't grant them that status. Usually what happens is the people who try and, in a social situation, exercise status power without having that status, they get punished, and they get punished by the group. So how does this relate to power and asserting behavior? Oftentimes, with positional authority, what we tend to see is that people's relationship with influence runs a span from a highly aggressive behavior, almost bullying when they have the power, to submissive behavior when you don't have power. And this is an interesting phenomenon. The same person can be very aggressive or very submissive if they don't have a healthy relationship with that positional authority or positional power. It is possible to, regardless of your position and your particular authority in an organization, to be neither aggressive nor submissive when you're talking about trying to assert influence. And there's a sweet spot there where you find asserting without the use of force. Here's an example of someone asserting their particular will in a situation in which they have less than no power. In this case, they're severely compromised against the power that they face. Take a look at this video. Now that you've seen the video, here's a couple of thoughts around the particular exercise we'd like you to do. In this exercise, again, you'll start with the complaint. You'll be looking to have a conversation with an individual with whom you have a complaint. And you're going to practice just using the asserting style and assertive behavior in the conversation. I'd like you to approach that person and use these 5 phrases in a conversation with them, stating simply, given the situation, I like this, I don't like that, what I want is this, and if you do what I'm asking, I will do something for you. If you don't do what I'm asking, I'll do something else. On the Spark site, the Spark course site for this module, there are 2 examples showing you team members having a conversation using these 5 statements. I'd like you to pay attention as you do this to your tendency to want to soften the blow, mitigate your communication around these 5 statements. The challenge for many of us is we're uncomfortable stating purely our will in circumstances when we don't have power. So this is an exercise that's designed to have you have a simple experience of that. Not a super challenging experience, but to able to stay with the exercise of your will and to state it clearly and succinctly with another person without trying to change or alter the statements themselves or to in some way compromise how you expressed your will with another. You don't know if somebody's going to accept what you are saying. And in this case, we don't really care. You don't have to engage in a long conversation. You can just simply state, here's what I like about what's happening, here's what I don't like about what's happening, here's what I want from you, and if you're able to do that, I can do something else. If you're not able to do that, I'll have to do a different thing. Here are some simple do's and don'ts as you consider this exercise. Do choose a situation that's not high stakes. We asked you to come up with 3 examples. Pick one of those 3. Make sure you pick the time and place carefully. You want to do it in a situation where you're not going to be interrupted and distracted. Stick to those 5 statements. Again, here the point is to practice asserting, just like we're practicing a backhand. You want to also pay attention to your reaction to what's it like for me to do this? How do I, in some way, perhaps alter my language? What's it like for me internally to actually say these 5 statements to somebody? And then you want to pay attention to what their reaction is. How do they respond to you? How do they come back to you if they do? You don't have to stick around for a long time, but do listen attentively. And if they explain away the situation and it seems like they're not addressing what it is that you're saying, at least one time repeat your 5 statements. Say thank you. Here's what I want you to know. Again, I really like this. I don't like that. I want this from you. And if you're able to do that for me, I can do this for you. If you're not able to do that, I'll have to do something else. And then just move away. There's no reason to stay or linger with this conversation. Hopefully it has an influence then in a positive way, but let's explore it and ask you to report on your experience in the discussion forum. Some don'ts for this one: don't wait till you feel comfortable. Don't try and rationalize or soften the expression of your will. And accept that they can respond to your requests with a yes, no, or perhaps they have a counter offer. So when you get to what you want, if you state, I want you to communicate with me in this fashion, maybe it's twice a week, or maybe it's use only text because I'm on the road and I don't really have time to check my email. Whatever you request, they can respond to it by saying yes or no, or they can say, you know what, I can't do it twice a week. I can communicate with you once a week, and most of the time I can do text messages, but under these circumstances, I'm going to be sending you an email. And that's fine. Again, you don't have to stay with this for long. So look forward to hearing your comments and seeing what you have to say in the discussion page.